OK, you're the Health Secretary. There's an election on. A major hospital issue is raging in a constituency with a history of flip-flopping between the Conservatives and Labour. Would you pledge to restore 24-hour accident and emergency with no advance briefings to make sure the cameras were there? Jeremy Hunt did in Stafford. But since then, the campaigners have been out again in protest at the transfer of the current children's ward from Stafford to Stoke. Here's our BBC Stoke political reporter, James Boville.
Jessica Louise Nixon loves to play doctors and nurses with her sisters. She's got a rare condition called Beckwith-Wideman syndrome, which affects her breathing. So when she needs real doctors and nurses, she's got open access to County Hospital's children's ward about 10 minutes away. But from tomorrow, all that changes.
Well, once the 24/7 PAU was gone, the overnight care, basically she has an episode, and we've been told now we've got open access at Stoke, but for ourselves, if the roads are clear, we can get up to Stoke in about 30-35 minutes. There's children who use the children unit at night, use it far more frequently than Jessica Louise has to, with conditions that get serious far quicker. It's a scary prospect. Children will die if there's closure.
At the moment, sick children taken to Stafford's A&E would have to stay here on site if, for whatever reason, they needed to stay overnight.
From tomorrow, the same child would still be assessed in Stafford, but if they needed surgery or an overnight stay, they'd have to travel 18 miles up the M6 to a new ward at the Royal Stoke University Hospital or New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton, whichever's closer. It's the latest change to services at Stafford and comes 3.5 years after A&E was first closed overnight. Earlier this year, maternity services were downgraded and emergency surgery was stopped. An 8-bed haematology ward will close in August.
And for campaigners who fought for years now to stop services moving here to Stoke-on-Trent, that's a real worry.
They've marched through town, they've camped for months outside the hospital. One of them has even stood for Parliament to fight the removal of services from Stafford. And that's a fight that still goes on.
You should keep your local general hospital and access to paediatric services open. That does not make it a proper A&E unit. Any A&E unit has to have a paediatric service 24 hours. That is a proper A&E.
In a statement, the University Hospitals of North Midlands NHS Trust says, for those with conditions requiring overnight stays, we're ensuring they're in the best place possible to benefit from a wider clinical team who care for large numbers of patients with similar conditions on a daily basis. So will services ever be brought back to Stafford? The Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, made a pre-election promise to restore A&E when it's clinically safe to do so. So do people in Stafford trust him to deliver?
All you can do is hope, but it can't possibly be as it was anymore, and it isn't. And from what people are saying, and my own experience, it's brilliant.
One of the family was ill, and you had to pass Stafford Hospital and go to Hanley, and it took 35 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes to get to Stafford Hospital, 35 to get up there. Could have died.
The children's ward in Stafford has become a way of life for the Nixon family. Moving that ward to Stoke-on-Trent is another hurdle in what's already been a difficult few years for Jessica Louise.
James Boville and the Chief Executive of the University Hospital of North Staffordshire, Mark Hackett, will be in BBC Radio Stoke's hot seat with Perry Spiller at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And we're also joined here today by one of the founders of Support Stafford Hospital, the campaign there, Cheryl Porter. Now, we've had the promise from the Health Secretary, so what exactly are you campaigning for now, Cheryl?
Well, we want that promise from Jeremy Hunt, obviously, to restore a 24 A&E department in Stafford, 24/7. Obviously for us, we know emergency surgery is gone, but we would like to see that to come back in the future.
And this is the key question, isn't it? Because he says when it's clinically safe, and thereby hang a number of things in terms of restoring services that have been sent away in order to make accident and emergency service safe, isn't it?
Yes. So, you know, there's a lot of issues here, but we all know that the surrounding hospitals are really struggling to cope. You know, we have children now now having to go up to Stoke, but they can't cope with the full capacity from Stafford, so
And
they've
the
split
direction
them.
of travel, though, is still the other way, isn't it? We're seeing that this children's
Yes.
ward is going away from Stafford.
Away from Stafford, some to Stoke, some to Wolverhampton. The capacity at Stoke is overflowing. You know, Stoke have always been the trauma hospital, but now they've taken on all the general acute cases and they are really struggling to cope. And now taking children along with our maternity services, it's getting rather ridiculous up there for the staff. They really are being pushed to the limits. And
Well, now, Jeremy, I mean, obviously Cheryl is very far from satisfied, despite that assurance by Jeremy. Are you satisfied after this?
No, I'm not satisfied. I mean, I welcome the assurance and I want to see that happen, but along with Cheryl and the others, we've been fighting against the move of these services because we believe fundamentally the decision was flawed and wrong. Now we have to live with what we've got now and continue to fight. The first step is 24/7.
Is it an admission, in effect, that moving most things, particularly to Stoke, hasn't worked because it is, as we're heard, creaking at the seams?
I think if we look at the various issues, first of all, A&E, Stoke has been under tremendous pressure from A&E for a number of reasons, not just the transfer of some of Stafford, but no doubt that hasn't helped. That's why we want the 24/7 back at Stafford. We then talk about maternity and paediatrics. In the case of paediatrics, which is, as Cheryl said, has just moved this weekend, that's inpatient paediatrics, we believe, again, that is going to put additional pressure on hospitals, not just in Stoke, but elsewhere. And we also believe it's not right for our children locally who are not able to have the services on the spot that they
And
do.
will you be insisting to Jeremy Hunt that he delivers on all these things that you're talking about?
Well, the 24-hour A&E, absolutely. We've also, in our campaign and during my campaign, talked about paediatrics. There's, in terms of consultant-led maternity, there's an NHS England review into that at the moment. It's not just about Stafford. Eastbourne, for instance, lost its consultant-led maternity recently. We want to see smaller district general hospitals continue to be able to offer consultant-led maternity services, and that's why the review is so important.
We should never, of course, forget that this whole crisis at Stafford developed on your watch while your government was in the headline dash for NHS Foundation Trust status.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm not.
So
gonna...
no lectures from Labour.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and defend what happened at Stafford Hospital over the years. We must all listen, including Jeremy Hunt. We must listen to all of the many different inquiries and reviews that have happened into Stafford and act on them. But I mean, the only lecture I would say from the Labour Party is that when your NHS services are crumbling like they were in 1997, you have to invest, and it will take investment to get it up to whatever the clinically safe level is.
And on that precise point, we keep hearing the argument that smaller general hospitals like Stafford simply don't have the critical mass, they don't have the numbers to keep enough specialists sufficiently busy for it to be clinically and financially secure in the way that this conversation is talking about.
well, I understand that argument, but I also feel that we felt that joining with a larger hospital who had the trauma side would help Stafford stay as a general acute hospital, because when we looked at doing this 3.5 years ago, we looked at networking, so they would still keep their knowledge of their trauma side, but also keep their general acute in Stafford, and that would be a networking with all the consultants crossing over, so they would keep both, but keep all communities safe, not remove a whole wonderful acute general from one community up a motorway.
How long has the government got, Jeremy, to get this right? What's the time frame we're talking about?
Cheryl's hit the nail on the head. This is all about, we totally supported coming together so that we could network. And this is not just about Stafford, this is about district general hospitals across the country. We want to see Stafford as an example of how a local DGH can offer as many general services as possible, while recognising that specialist hospital services have to be elsewhere. I personally think that we're talking about much bigger issues, and we've got the next...
How long a period?
I think over the next 5 years, we've got to look at a fundamentally different model for the NHS, and that needs working across party. This is much more important than a one party's ideas or another. And we have got to do that in this Parliament.
I saw Jess nodding her head at that as well. Thank you for the vote. Particular thanks to you, Cheryl, for being with us here today.